Yes, use me, oh God. Use me, oh God, I stand for you. Here I'll abide as you show me all that I can do. I used to think that God was the sun, God is the sun, but God's so much more than the earth or the stars or all of creation. God is creator, all in all, leading us to shine its light as we, as you. So use me, oh God, I stand for you. Here I'll abide as you show me all that I must do. Command my hands, what must they do? Command my life, it's here for you. God is the love that heals all creation. God is creator, makes all things new. And God needs us to shine its light as we, as you. So use me, oh God, I stand for you. And here I'll abide as you show me all that I must do. Show me all that I can do. Show me all that I can do. So it is.
We can and we must. Or we can do both. Some announcements this morning. Prayer chaplains are always available for any prayers that you need to be shared with, holding the space for. If you have a prayer request, it's always nice to have someone that you know that will listen and will keep that close to them and share that with Spirit. Just hold the space for you. So if you'd like your request and get in touch with the prayer chaplains, it's UOFMC prayer requests at gmail.com, or drop in the prayer box in the back of the room, and all prayer requests are welcomed. A Course in Miracles every Sunday morning, 9:30 on Zoom, 9:30 to 11. Watch for the happenings, also for the link to that Zoom meeting on Sunday morning. There will be a Leadership Council meeting on July the 21st, that's this coming Wednesday, at 6:30 p.m. Congregants, everybody is welcome to attend this meeting. So if you have a question or concern, please email it in advance to the office, to unityofmusiccity@gmail.com, and it will be addressed at the meeting. The welcome team is looking for a ministry lead as well as some greeters. So if people are your thing, you like to get to know people and you want to know their name right away, when they walk in the door, if that's your thing, if that's your forte, because for some people it is, I mean, man, they're on it. That it's nice to have somebody when you're new, when you walk in a door, and people, just like, oh, I'm a new face. It's nice to
I just want a hug.
Yeah, absolutely. And now we can hug. Yeah, so if you're that kind of person, there's a ministry lead that's needed, and also some greeters. So please email or call the office if this is something that you may be called to do. A reminder on Sunday, August the 8th, put this on your calendar. We will be back at the Quality Suites down the street, 2615 Elm Hill Pike, for just 1 week. Okay, just one. The memorial for Rich Lake is coming up this coming Saturday, July the 24th. Visitation is at 10 a.m. and the service is at 11. It's a celebration of life at the Anderson Funeral Home, 202 East Main Street, Gallatin, Tennessee, 37066. Again, that's Anderson Funeral Home, 202 East Main Street, Gallatin, Tennessee, 37066. Okay, that's the announcements for this morning. Let's sing again.
Let's stand as we stand
let's do.
in our truth. You can clap, that's okay. I'm not gonna give in to this world's misery. I've learned a lesson that always sets me free. In any situation, the best thing I can do is to know who I am and let that light shine through. I'm gonna stand in my truth. Stand in my truth. I'm gonna stand in my truth and let my troubles go. Troubles go. I'm gonna stand in my truth. Stand in my truth. I'm gonna whisper a prayer to claim my power to make it so. Make it so. I will not get caught up in other people's stuff. Keeping my focus for me is quite enough. When I'm feeling cornered, I get still and breathe and remember who I am and all that I believe. I'm gonna stand in my truth. Stand in my truth. I'm gonna stand in my truth and let my troubles go. Troubles go. I'm gonna stand in my truth. Stand in my truth. I'm gonna whisper a prayer to claim my power to make it so. Make it so. I'm gonna stand in my truth. Stand in my truth. I'm gonna stand in my truth and let my troubles go. Troubles go. I'm gonna stand in my truth. Stand in my truth. I'm gonna whisper a prayer and claim my power to make it so. Make it so. I'm gonna whisper a prayer and claim my power to make it so. Make it so. Yes, I'm gonna whisper a prayer to claim my power to make it so. Make it so. Yeah, make it so. Y'all sound great.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Today's sacred word comes from the book A Return to Love by Mary Ann Williamson. The passage, The Surrendered Life. Holy child of God, when will you learn that only holiness can content you and give you peace? To relax, to feel the love in your heart and to keep that as your focus in every situation. That's the meaning of spiritual surrender. It changes us. We become deeper, more attractive people. In Zen Buddhism, there's a concept called Zen mind or beginner's mind. They say that the mind should be empty, like an empty rice bowl. If it's already full, then the universe can't fill it. If it's empty, it has room to receive. This means that when we think we have things already figured out, we're not teachable. Genuine insight can't dawn on a mind that's not open to receive it. Surrender is a process of emptying the mind. In the Christic tradition, this is the meaning of becoming as a little child. Little children don't think they know what things mean. In fact, they don't know. They ask someone older and wiser to explain things to them. We're like children who don't know, but we think we do. The wise person doesn't pretend to know what's impossible to know. I don't know can be an empowering statement. When we go into a situation not knowing, there is something inside of us which does. With our conscious mind, we step back in order that a higher power within us can step inside and lead the way.
And so in this time of stillness, we step back and we let that higher power lead our way by first anchoring into our breath. And as we return to deep, cleansing breaths, perhaps the deepest breath you've had in months, we just relax together where we are, as we are. For the reason we've been drawn together is to remember who we are. For this breath is the presence of all that is. And in this breath is our connection to all that is. All peace, all love, all knowing. Simply allowed by the surrender of our own will to the will of love. And in this holy moment, I will to will God's will in my life. Say that with me. I will to will God's will in my life. And once again, I will to will God's will in my life. So we relax knowing that our own strategies are simply not needed. It's our receptivity and availability to love's ideal unfoldment of circumstances. As we breathe into this truth, that it is not for us to design, but it is for us to resign to the higher purposes of love. And there we find the peace we are. In this place of release and refuge, we open to the still small voice of love and ask, who might you have me be? Where would you have me go? What would you have me say? And to whom? And as we pause in the stillness, we are available for love's answer. In the silence. God's will in my life. I will to will God's will in my life. I will to will God's will in my life. Who would you have me be? Where would you have me go? And what would you have me say? And to whom? Use me, oh God. I stand for you, and here I'll abide. As you show me all that I can do, all that I must do. Use me. Namaste. You. Beautiful as always. Thank you for the beautiful music. Good to see you all. Good morning.
Good morning.
I surrender all. Easier said than done. As my grandmother used to say. Well, that's easier said than done. You know, Grandma, if you'll not eat that okra fried and instead you bake it, it might help your cholesterol. Well, we like it fried. And you know, change is easier said than done. Which is true. Which is true. Which brings us to this beautiful face, which is how this talk originated Friday night. Is anybody familiar with Lisa Nichols? Yes. Powerful woman. Speaker, of course, spiritual speaker. And she's been all over on many different stages. And Friday night, she was on the stage of my living room because I decided that I was going to participate in her speaker's training. And so she began by asking us several questions. A lot of the questions we've heard before, and she was asking us, okay, now fill in the blank. So when I feel like every cell in my body is smiling, I am doing this, right? Leading us to our own message, leading us to our own truth, leading us to the most important things that we could ever share. And so You know that feeling of when you've done some of this work for a while, you think, oh, I'll play along. I have 17 purpose statements, but let me just be here for the process. So there I am on the sofa, and she says this, which I was not expecting. I am ready for a time such as this because I've already navigated through the hard moments of blank. And I went, Jesus. And so, my canned answers came up, navigated through the hard moments of, being gay and coming out. Oh, I don't know, going back to the grocery store post-COVID. I still use the app, the order app. That's just something that it's just going to be mine. I'm taking it all the way in. It's just better for me. I'm an introvert. I'm learning this about myself. I'm ready for a time such as this because I've already navigated through the hard moments of feeling like a disappointment. Whoa. Have you all ever watched Mama's Family? And that moment where Thelma Harper looks at the camera and says, uh-oh. Well, that's exactly what happened for me in my living room Friday night because of all the work I've done before, nothing has ever come up that was just like that. And you know that feeling when you know I'm about to be used in a way that haven't exactly been used before? This is going to be something. You know that feeling. Uh-oh. So I thought, okay, I'll play along. That's what I'm here to do. So disappointment. I said, okay, so feeling like a disappointment. Well, what I just said to the universe in my living room, I paused Lisa Nichols. And I said, well, what is disappointment? And I immediately got back, disappointment is an ego projection. Oh, isn't that lovely? So that'll keep me from what I'm really supposed to hear. Because if we have that good, heady, intellectual stuff, that'll keep us from the heart of the matter. So I went back in and I said, okay, let me do this. Let me get on my phone and let me look at the definition for disappointment. The state of being disappointed. Exactly. Now we have clarity. I thought, well, okay, let me look up disappoint. To fail to fulfill the expectations or wishes of, or to bring or cause disappointment. So I sat there and I thought, okay, so what is this thing that I've walked through? Lisa Nichols says, I'm ready for a time such as this because I've already navigated through the hard moments of, and then I had this moment. Oh. That thing that has come up all of the last 6 talks that I've done, that every single time it's come up, I've said, it's not time for that yet. Yeah, that really is not completely relevant. Let me just not go there this time. And I thought, okay, so this will be the week. This will be the week that I talk about the experience that I had when I came to Belmont as a 17-year-old high school graduate in the fall of 1995, and along with my dorm key and my student ID and my naivete, I was handed a credit card application. Anybody know where this is going?
Yeah.
Sure. Now, my father was one of those fathers who said, don't worry about why, just don't do it. Don't get a credit card. Nothing good can come from it. Just don't do it. Well, those of you who know me a little bit know that if you tell me that, I'm going to have to find out. I'm going to have to find out exactly what he's about and all of those things, and I'm going to have to go down that road. And so, a credit card was one of those things that I had to learn. And I'll say that I had to learn it the hard way, but what's really true is I had to learn it the heart way. The heart way. And so, eventually what happened is that credit card turned into another credit card, and that credit card turned into 2 more credit cards, and transferring balances from one credit card to another credit card with a 0% entry, you know where I'm going with all this. And the next thing you know, I'm working in HIV, which is wonderful, but I'm making about $31,000 a year, and I'm trying to live in Nashville. And so credit card debt, credit card debt, credit card debt, credit card debt. Fast forward to 2015, and I'm a student of Edwin Gaines' Prosperity. You know Edwin Gaines in this room. And so I was at Valley Head, Alabama, in one of her seminars, and she said, the truth is all debt is really about an unwillingness to forgive. And that's why when a debt is forgiven, that is why we call it that, forgiveness of a debt. I thought, that doesn't make any sense, but I'm not going to ask. So I went back a couple more times, and finally I said, excuse me, can you please break down why being in debt is about an unwillingness to forgive? Her eyes lit up. Oh, yes. I would be happy to. So what I learned in that room was that we can't heal what we believe we have to hide. We can't heal what we believe we have to hide. And until that day, I believed that I had to hide the fact that I was about $60,000 in credit card debt. Woo! Feels good to say it out loud. I tell you what feels even better to say. I'm in $0 of credit card debt today. That feels great. And there's a journey in there. There's a B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y. Between that A and that Z. And yes, it had to do with my willingness to forgive me. My forgiveness of myself for being a disappointment to my father. My forgiveness of myself for being a disappointment to myself. For not being more financially responsible. For not knowing better. But when I decided that I would acknowledge in that room what I was willing to surrender to be healed, because I decided it no longer needed to be hidden, so therefore it was available to be healed, this voice fell into my consciousness that said, did you ever promise anyone you would do everything right every time? Did you ever promise that? Was there ever a day in your life that you promised that promise to any human being? I said, I don't think so. God, I hope not. And it was true. I hadn't ever made that promise. And so in the space of being willing to forgive myself for the decisions that I had made around the use of credit cards, period. That's what it boiled down to. The use of credit cards. Some frivolous use, some not so frivolous use. Sometimes I tithed on a credit card. Surely that had to count for something. It counted to Edwin Gaines. Oh, but seriously, you know, I used them. I used them as a tool in my life, unconsciously and consciously. And finally, I came to a place where I was simply willing to forgive that. Now, what happened in my willingness to forgive was I became open to the solution. Because until I was willing to forgive this debt, I was completely preoccupied with figuring out how to manage it. How to hide it, how to manage it, how to contain it, how to keep people from knowing about it, how to, God forbid, admit it to anybody at any point. And so therefore I wasn't open to solutions. Well, here's what ended up happening. I decided to forgive myself for the debt. And what continue to come to me is the answer is filing bankruptcy. Woo! Big one. Really big one. The answer is filing bankruptcy. I said, how could that be? That couldn't possibly be. Because that's like right next to voting Democratic. You don't do it. Where I was raised. Breathe. Just kidding. Just kidding. It's where I was raised. That's the way it was seen. You don't do it. You don't file bankruptcy. You don't say bad things about your neighbor. You don't kick your dog. You know, those kind of things. You just don't do it at any cost. But this is when my relationship with God really got real. Because despite the fact of the world's teaching, despite what my father would have said, despite a lot of things, I felt guided to do that. And what I realized was that in my willingness to forgive that debt, the means to have that debt forgiven simply moved right into view. Now, many people may disagree and say that that was not the right decision at the right time. But I know in hindsight, for sure, it was the right decision for me. And that was 2015. And let me tell you what's also really interesting. At the time that I was contemplating filing bankruptcy, I was thinking if I could just figure out a way to make more money. I was already working 3 jobs. But if I could just figure out a way to make more money, like find a 6-figure job, then I could work this all out. Well, here's what happened 2 years after I filed bankruptcy. A 6-figure job. Out of nowhere. It was a means to the end, which was the healing of that debt. The healing of that debt, which I had been willing to forgive myself for. Whew. So how does this take us back to disappointment? Well, what I learned in that process was that no matter why you think you're disappointed, if you're experiencing disappointment, it's because you're creating it. I'm creating it. If I'm disappointed, I am somehow perpetuating, continuing, feeding, enabling that experience of disappointment. Back to Friday night on my couch. I'm thinking, okay, so what does the Course in Miracles say about disappointment? Because here we go, we're off and running. This is going to be what we're going to talk about. Disappointment is what happens when we are willing to create apart from love, just like everything else. You think you have a problem called bankruptcy, or you think you have a problem called debt, you think you have a problem called disappointment. And really what you have is a willingness to think apart from love and allow that to be your experience. Whew. So, I thought, well, disappointment of itself is not a force, right? So what exactly is it that has invited me to be disappointed? Well, the counterforce is our tendency to think without love, because when we think without love, we're thinking in alignment with ego. We have a tendency to think according to our ego's belief. What our ego would have us believe is true. The thinking of the world. Seems very simple, but sometimes it can be insidious. So let's talk about another thing that happened this week really quickly. And that is that I was invited to speak at a training for the Metro Nashville Police Department cadets, Mobile Diversity Seminar, and I was asked to present a piece that had been offered through Divine Inspiration many months before. I had been a part of receiving that. And it is a tool called Resilient Listening. And basically what this tool talks about is overcoming the tendency to close our hearts when we feel uncertain about what we're hearing. And so the person who invited me to speak at the police seminar thought, you know what, this is an ideal time to introduce to these cadets who are about to become Metro Nashville police officers. This is an ideal time to introduce to them that there are going to be many different truths that they're going to encounter in their work, many different perspectives, many different walks of life, and their ability to be present and even lean in whenever they're faced with something that they feel uncomfortable with could really bring about transformation in their work and therefore the lives that they touch. And so I thought, I'm the man. I am called for this purpose at this time. And so I show up Thursday morning, 7:30. It's fine, no problem. I'm there, I'm showered, I'm shaven. And I did what I thought was a really good job, explaining this tool, engaging, getting feedback, doing the thing, right? We come to the end of the time. I was given 30 minutes to speak. I said, I appreciate you, I appreciate where you've been, and I appreciate where you're headed. Thank you. Oh, exactly. I thought, you know, most of the time, I've been on stage for a long time in various capacities. Most of the time, if that's going to happen, you know it. You know it way before you ever get to the end because you can feel it. But what was so interesting is that this room felt engaged. They felt leaned in. They felt into it. So guess what happened? In that moment, I thought, uh-oh, I'm a disappointment. I've disappointed my friend who's asked me to do this talk. The tool is disappointing. The tool came through me. That's a disappointment. They're disappointed. We just kicked off the day. Everything, you know, I started to do that thing. And then all of a sudden, it was like a screeching halt. And I handed the mic back to the moderator, and I went back behind the curtain, and I stood there, and this is what I heard. You don't know what this is about. You think you know. You don't know what this is about. And your willingness to let what you think is true be true is a mistake. You let me have this. You surrender this. You put this on the altar. You did exactly what I asked you to do. You did exactly what you came to do, and you did it well. And you know you did it well. Now let me handle the rest. In other words, disappointment, completely optional. Based on me thinking that I knew why I was there. And I knew what had to happen. And I knew that in order for that to be effective, it had to be a standing ovation. It had to be rousing applause. It had to be all of those things that the thought system of the world would say good and right. And so you know what happened? My friend who invited me to come speak came over and she said, how do you feel? And I said, I feel complete. I feel complete. And she kind of wanted to, I could feel that she was kind of pushing for it. No, how do you feel? How do you feel you did? Right? Because that's the tendency, right? How do you feel about it? You think it was effective? You think it was impactful? Do you think? And that was all I said. I feel complete. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Because I knew I had a piece that I had done exactly what I've been asked to do. Now, we'll see what comes from that. But it was this perfect opportunity for me to understand. I can change my mind, but I can't change the law. And the law is that I will be at the effect of any thought I choose to think. So if I choose to think that it was a disappointment, if I choose to think it was a failure, if I choose to think that what needed to happen didn't happen, that will be my experience. And I will wear that until I change my mind about it. So that's why I realized Friday night when Lisa Nichols said, you're ready for a time such as this because you've already navigated the hard moments of feeling like a disappointment and learning that that is optional. Learning that that is optional. So then I got to thinking about, okay, but what did Charles Fillmore say about this? Or what did, the Course in Miracles say about this? What really is there to dive into? So this is what I got, and I really appreciate this teaching, and that is, whenever we think without love, the person we think without love for is always ourselves. Because we simply cannot think it without experiencing it. And so, even though fearful perceptions are running the world, it does us good to look at that but not dwell on it. And the Course in Miracles reminds us that the crucifixion is the same way. We are to look at it. We are to acknowledge the crucifixion but not dwell on it. We dwell on the resurrection, which is our opportunity to shift from a loveless thought to a loving thought. Yes, about bankruptcy. Yes, about debt. Yes, about the fact that the neighbor won't mow their damn grass. It happens, right? Was that for you, Ryan? Oh, okay, me too. So, it happens, right? So, I got into the origin of ego. Because if disappointment is an ego projection, then why is it that we have an ego in the first place? So I went down that rabbit hole a little bit and thought that was pretty interesting. A Course in Miracles says millions and millions of years ago, in a time that we know as the separation, the human consciousness took a detour into fear. And it was a process that happened over millions of years. So it didn't just happen in an instant as we've been led to believe. But it's represented in the Bible as the time that Adam and Eve were exiled out of the garden. But here's something really important. Adam and Eve walked out of the garden, which indicates choice. Why is that so important? Because our exit from the Garden of Eden that lives within us is a choice. And it's a choice that happens on the level of our thought. That song we sing, I'm choosing heaven today in unity. Heaven is always within us, always available, but it must be chosen as the result of how we align our thoughts with the thoughts of heaven. Even though we cannot contradict God's loving world, because God made the world in love, for love, as love. We cannot contradict that, but we can create in our minds a sense of separation from it. We can do that. And we talk in here all the time about the fact that we're creative no matter whether we're here for love or here for fear. We are creative. The nature of our minds is simply to create. Now, I wrote a song 15 years ago, or approximately, with a lady named Amy Lee, and it's called Here for Love. I didn't a bit more understand what the hell that song meant then. But I loved it, and I sang it all the time. And I was thinking when I was writing the song, writing the talk, that that's exactly what that song means. You're here. Are you here for love or are you here for fear? It's your choice. But you're here regardless, and so is love. But do you know that? Are we always conscious of that option with regard to anything we frame, anything we perceive, anything we encounter? Love is here for that. Are we here for the love interpretation of it? Lord. So, I got a little bit further into disappointment in the Course in Miracles, and I thought this was really amazing. A Course in Miracles says that on some level, we're disappointed about life because we know that the world that we see is not the truth of who we are. And so A Course in Miracles says, you don't really want the world you see because it has disappointed you since time began. The homes you built have never sheltered you. The roads you made have led you nowhere. And no city you built has withstood the crumbling assault of time. Nothing you made but has the mark of death upon it. Hold it not dear, for it is old and tired and ready to return to dust, even as you made it. Now, what's so important about that is that even as you made it. And that's why in our meditation we talked about surrendering our will to the will of God. If we want to touch that world that we know on some level is the truth of who we are and is accessible to us, then we must drop our own will. We must drop our own willingness to align with the thinking of the world, with our ego, and be available for the thoughts and the perceptions of love. There's nothing outside of ourselves that can bring lasting peace. And yet we are outside of ourselves all the time, trying to figure out a way to make that not true. Imagine if you went to the doctor and you told the doctor that you had all these symptoms going on. Now, this is Wayne Dyer. I'm in full disclosure, but I love it. And she said to you, okay, I'm going to write this prescription for that, I'm going to write this prescription for that, and this prescription for that. And as you leave the doctor's office, you ask her, can I have my prescriptions? And she says, oh, no. This one's for your mother-in-law. This one's for your neighbor who won't mow their grass. This one's for your dog that keeps doing something you don't want it to do. And you're like, but I need the prescription. I have the problem. Exactly. But you think the problem is outside of you, which is never the case. Oh man, I love that logic, and I use that all the time. But our willingness to, excuse me, Charlie horse, calf, our willingness to shift our perception of anything is how we rise above the battlefield. The battlefield is the thinking of the world. But our willingness to be available for a solution, a love solution, that is above the thinking of the battlefield, is simply about our willingness to ascend, to be lifted above the battlefield. Now, what happens in order for that to be possible? Surrender. We must first be willing to let go. Now, Charles Fillmore says something really interesting about, you know the hymn, Oh Happy Day, where it talks about, he taught me how to watch and pray. Charles Fillmore's interpretation of watch and pray is watch your thoughts and pray for the loving interpretation. When you watch your thoughts that have that inertia that pulls you down, when you watch the thought actually miring you in despair and fear and angst, pray for the love refrain. Watch and pray. Something that's really important about our disappointment is that it cannot fuel who we need to be in the world. Sometimes we think that dissatisfaction can propel us forward, but the truth is that dissatisfaction and disdain and disappointment is a negative reinforcement. In order to be who we're here in the world at the velocity and the magnitude that we're here to be, we must release the disappointment, the disdain, and the distaste for the love interpretation. So that we can see it through the lens of love, see it through the eyes of love, actually be the manifestation of the love perception. Being available for that. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to end this today with a prayer. If you like to close your eyes when you pray, I invite you to close your eyes. Everybody has something that has been disappointing. Everybody has a time where they have felt like a disappointment. And everybody has done something at some point to avoid disappointing someone else. In this moment, bring that to mind. All to Spirit I surrender. All to Thee I freely give. I will ever love and trust it in the presence daily live. I surrender all. I surrender all. All to Thee, the blessed Spirit, I surrender all. I surrender all. I surrender all. All to Thee, the blessed Spirit, I surrender all. I surrender all. Namaste.
Thank you, Vic. I do want to clarify one thing about Vic's lesson, that Unity of Music City does accept debit cards and credit cards. Either way, please give us some of your tithes and offerings in whichever way you see fit. It's always a blessing to us. On that note, let's say our prosperity blessing. I am open to receiving floods of financial abundance with ease, so that I may be able to give back even more to the world around me. And let's stand as we're able and sing, I live in a world of infinite abundance. I live in the midst of infinite abundance. I give freely and fearlessly to life. I live in the midst of infinite abundance, and life gives back to me. I live in the midst of infinite abundance. I give freely and fearlessly to life. I live in the midst of infinite abundance, and life gives back to me. And life gives back to me.
Join us in saying the prayer of protection. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. All is well, life is
Y'all have a great